Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism. And now we are joined by Rena Vanzo, who is Vice President of Clinical Services at Lineagen, Inc., and she is here to talk to us about genetic testing. Welcome to the show, Rena.
Hi, thank you, Nancy, Shannon. It's great to be back.
Good to have you back. Tell us why genetic testing is critical for individuals with autism spectrum disorder.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry you cut out for just a moment, but I'm guessing you asked why genetic testing is critical for people who have a diagnosis of autism.
Yes.
It's a very Okay, great. It's a very common question that we get from families and in some cases doctors as well. And what I always end up telling them, and I think there is a slide that we can show if you're able to put that up on the screen. Really, there are several reasons, but some of the most important ones that families will mention are the fact that it gives them an answer. You know, having a name for a condition that's maybe underlying autism. A lot of families will say things like, gosh, did I do something during the pregnancy? Did I not do something during the pregnancy that I should have? What caused this? And we know that autism, in large part, is hereditary or genetic in nature. So this is something that's really helpful for families to know. And then also having that genetic name, it can give us more of an idea about that child's developmental and medical trajectory over time. So for example, if we know a child has something like DeGeorge syndrome or Angelman syndrome, we will be able to give that family more specifics about the child's medical risks, and then also some guidance about what their capabilities are going to be, what things may work better for them in terms of treatment, or what things may be avoided. And then a couple other components that may be important for families. It all depends on the family, and it all depends on where that child is in his or her development. But families may want to know, could we have another child or a grandchild with the same condition? The risk might be higher if it is found to be something genetic, but it could also be something that is no more common than in the general public. But the bottom line is we can't give those numbers unless we know the underlying genetic condition. And then finally, a lot of families really appreciate getting access to a specific support group. Of course, there are lots of wonderful autism support groups out there, but I've heard families over the years say, well, what works for my child doesn't seem to work for anyone else, and vice versa. And so if we can take people who have a diagnosis of autism, give them a more specific diagnosis, as I mentioned, like Angelman syndrome, DeGeorge syndrome, 16p11.2 deletion syndrome, those families can come together in their group and talk with one another about what worked for them.
Okay, very good.
The story I always think about, you know, the website The Mighty. And one of the guys that was part of starting The Mighty has a child that initially they got a diagnosis of autism, I believe is what it was. But then upon doing the genetic testing, it came back. And I think they were testing to make sure, I think initially what the family thought was they were testing to look at potential Fragile X. But what came back was a very specific gene deletion that changed the trajectory of how they were going to treat it, because it wasn't just autism. It let them know what they might be looking at long term, so they rearranged their lives literally around it. And he left the job that he was in and said, I'm going to go do something else, and started The Mighty with a group of people. But it also gave, I remember him saying, we did an interview with him, and he said it gave me a community because there are so few people who have this gene deletion that they all are part of a family, that they connect through social media and they get together once or twice a year, and they were able to meet kids that were older, they were able to talk to parents, and that it put their minds at ease on a lot of things. And I always think about that story because had they not known that, they would have been in a world of hurt and frustration because you know, their child wasn't making the progress, doing the traditional things that were for autism. They needed some more help and support, and the family needed support for what was going to happen. So anyway, just a little side story of a family in which when they had that information, a lot of these things that you're talking about happened, Rena.
Yeah, and Shannon, it's exactly for that reason that many medical societies, like the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American College of Genomics and Genetics, they all recommend genetic testing when someone has autism or developmental delay so that we can give them these other elements to think about. I've personally been involved in several different support groups. I sit on the scientific advisory board for the Wolf-Hirschhorn syndrome support group, or 4P minus support group. And it's amazing to see these families come together year after year and share their stories and just really feel this sense of belonging, and acceptance among each other. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's a really. So anyway, I took you a little off your game. What do you want to tell us next? Because you got a lot of good information for us, Rena.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, families are going to wonder, okay, genetic testing, now that I'm hearing about it, how do I get it? And one thing that I've experienced over the years, I've been working with Lineagen for over 8 years and talked to hundreds of parents once they finally get to us for genetic testing. And oftentimes they will have a similar story. And Traven, this is shown on slide 2 that I've sent, if you'd like to show it. But there's this long, what we call diagnostic odyssey. You know, family may be concerned about their child's development. They may tell their pediatrician, but sometimes they get into this wait and see cycle where we're not quite sure yet. The doctor doesn't want to give the child a label or unnecessarily alarm the parents. So they wait and see how the child develops and grows between appointments. And then at that next appointment, maybe they're finally ready to start addressing it. But sometimes it takes 2 or 3 visits before the pediatrician would make a referral to see a specialist like a geneticist or neurologist or even developmental pediatrician. And sometimes those specialists can have wait lists that are in excess of a year. So it can be very frustrating for the family. Finally, they're having someone tell them, yes, you need to go see a specialist, but then they're being told you have to wait until summer of 2020 to see someone. So that can be frustrating. And then there are additional hoops on top of that because genetic testing requires pre-authorizations and a lot of documentation with insurers. So this whole process can be really frustrating, and end up costing the family not only financially but emotionally through that process of waiting. So what Lineagen has done is start a telemedicine program where families who now know they want genetic testing can go ahead and get it online through the comfort and convenience of home, but it's also aided by expert guidance. Physicians will review the family information and genetic counselors are available to talk to the family through the process. So if you go to the next slide, this is a screenshot from what you'll see on mydevelopingchild.com, which is our, as I said, new secure telemedicine website. Families can go in, enter information about their child's development, maybe the past medical history, any surgeries, reviewed by a doctor, and a cheek swab can be sent to the family's home. So we have a couple options for testing. Again, people can call and talk to a genetic counselor about what may be right for them, but there are components on the website. But what I've seen is that this really helps jumpstart that process. Families aren't waiting on a long list to see a doctor. Rather, they can have this important genetic information in hand when they go and see that specialist. So it speeds things along.
Okay, and will the cost of it then be covered by their insurance, or is that something that they would need to pay out of pocket?
That's a great question. And, you know, this is where if there was a catch, you know, everybody says sounds too good to be true. What's the catch? We won't take insurance through that pathway. And the reasoning is because, actually, I should say insurance won't take us. We're using some new methods, the most highly advanced genetic testing technologies, including whole exome sequencing, and rather whole genome sequencing is available now. And that is so advanced that insurers aren't covering it yet. So we're making it as affordable as we possibly can for families to access these critical tests, like I said, online. And I'm happy to give the prices here with you guys, Shannon and Nancy.
Sure.
Our essential test, which includes deletions, duplications of all the chromosomes, including the doctor evaluation and guidance, that's $888. And then the whole genome sequencing, which is, again, the most advanced test available today, includes deletions, duplications, as well as sequencing through all the genes themselves. that is about $3,300 altogether. So I know there's maybe a little bit of sticker shock with that, but we do also give families access to that raw data so they have it, and that can be reanalyzed over and over in the future. And we have had such a great partnership with autism-live over the years. We're going to be giving a promotion code to all of the viewers today. So if someone does want to go online and purchase a test, if you use the promotion code AL15 off, so standing for Autism Live 15 off, you'll get 15% off of those services.
Okay, there's the code right there now on the screen for
AL15 off.
AL15 off.
Okay, what else haven't we covered here?
I think it helps to give a snapshot of some of the conditions that can be diagnosed or ruled out based on these new tests. So that was slide 4 sent to you, Traven. Just families may wonder, okay, my child has autism. What are some of the conditions? I mentioned a few, but it is just so broad. Genetic research has exploded over the past several years, and new conditions are being associated with autism almost on a weekly basis. So this is just a snapshot of some of the conditions that the new test through My Developing Child would help us understand if a child had things like Wolf-Hirschhorn syndrome, 5P- or Crete-Shaw syndrome, Dupe 1q21, Dupe 15q, 15q 11.2 deletion syndrome, the list goes on. So in over 8 years of testing that Lineagen has done, we've found about 30 conditions that make up the most common findings, and all of those are covered by these new tests. And again, if you have any questions, if you're wondering, well, what about my child specifically, don't hesitate to give us a call, and we'll make sure you get to talk to a genetic counselor. And that number is 801-931-6191. I'm sorry I didn't put that on the slide, but I can say it again. It's 801-931-6191.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Rena. One of the things we need to do is get some new names for some of those things, because I don't know how anybody remembers all of those. That's a lot of numbers and letters. But we thank you for taking the time to be with us and explain that. And again, the code, if you go onto Lineagen and want to order some of these, either of these tests, there is the promo code. It's AL15 off. Thank you, Rena, for being with us.
Thank you. This is very exciting.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.